Good morning. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I had trouble getting on. I don't know
Ah,
what's causing it. I mean, I've been noticing this more and more every other time I try to get on Zoom, it doesn't, it just stuck the first try,
ah,
you know, where it shows the image of the video, you know,
okay.
it gets stuck on that. But I keep trying, and then this time, usually the second one starts right up. This one, the third one, it took the third one.
Well,
So I'm going to have to check it out because I need to be able to rely on it.
yeah, well, I think that I am just, technology is just having problems everywhere. So, yeah. I
Well,
don't
so's
think
the planet, so's everything else. So I'm not
that's right.
surprised.
Yeah.
So I put a friend of mine on the MARTA, which is the subway train,
Mm,
this morning early to go. She was headed down to the airport. She's flying to South Africa,
oh,
and she tripped evidently on a sill, you know, a simple sill, and opened up her leg. So we got her to a, you know, emergency care sort of place, sewed her up.
geez.
So now she'll make another effort on Monday.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I would be kind of scared, I think, to go to Africa with a big wound. I wouldn't be comfortable in India for the same reason.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, it isn't that big a wound. It was definitely bleeding a lot, and it was wise for her not to go any further, but today.
Yeah.
But I think in 3 days she'll be all right. It's not as if it's a big gaping wound that's open to all kinds of problems.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I spent 4th of July in the hospital.
Hard to hear that.
Yeah, and I was fine by then. Friday I was not fine at all, and then I kept getting better, but everybody went, oh my God, you've got to go to the hospital. So I did. I was fine, am fine. They don't know any more about it than I do. So yeah,
I keep plugging. I mean, I've been having terrible trouble with my legs. I won't even go into it. But finally, I started using Edgar Casey's castor oil packs.
Oh,
And this morning it just cleared right up.
wow, wow,
I hope for good, you know, you never know, but it cleared it up.
wow, very good, very good. So tell me more about your problem. What was it?
Well, it
Weakness?
was severe sciatica in one leg,
Okay.
and moderate edema in the other leg.
Huh.
By moderate, I mean, you've seen those pictures of, it wasn't blown up, but it was, you know, it was significant edema all the way up into my lower groin area.
Wow. Wow.
And weakness in both legs. Finally, I couldn't walk very well.
Wow.
And I did all kinds of different things with the chiropractor, a lymphatic masseuse. And finally, Terry did some research, and she said, well, and Terry's loves these, you know, castor oil packs. So I said, okay, we'll give it a shot. So 2 days running, and it's truly made a difference. I mean, it knocked me out at first, you know, like getting me really tired, but everything else seems to be clearing up, and I'm clearing up today. So we'll see what happens.
Well, I'm interested because I've had intermittent pains, and there's been a little bit of the sciatic kind of stuff, but there's just a strange, just pains throughout my legs that make me not want to stand and that kind of stuff. So that's why I'm curious.
Well,
So what are the castor oil packs? What is that?
well, what we've determined is that most of the issue has to do with lymph circulation. And it's undoubtedly due to the operations that I've had, or the radiation, the cancer treatments I've had.
Okay.
Because they've been located in that central region, and that's the groin, and that's where the blockage is.
Okay.
And so, I mean, it's obvious that that's what everything has in common. And so this wasn't just hit or miss. We did some assessment and realized that could very well treat it, because it targets that area. And it, and it helps to loosen up blockages by dissolving impurities, whatever.
Yeah, Casey had a really good handle on cancer, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and just repairing the damage we do to our bodies.
Yeah. Good morning, Ani.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Sorry I'm late.
Do you know Robert, do you know a person named Jo Petroni? She's an architect in Europe, and she is working with another friend of mine, Carl Welty, and I've invited them both to come, but neither one has done that. And Carl's an architect as well, and their interest is in architecture that really utilizes earth energy as part of the architecture. So how you situate the house and use airflow and all that kind of stuff. And Jo has got a thing about patterns. So we were talking yesterday about her idea of patterns and my idea of patterns. And we didn't get very far in terms of that. We just shared information, but she's a really interesting person. I do hope that she'll join us at one point, but who knows?
Well, there was an amazing Kathryn Alexander.
Yes, well, she's a really big fan of
Wasn't it?
Alexander. Yeah.
Amazing insight into
Yeah.
time.
Yes.
And so,
Yeah.
my favorite explanation of what he was after is his pattern language is
Yes, exactly.
architecture should follow, conscious patterns that are endemic in the human consciousness. Now that varies. So he said there isn't one, but and he was careful to be clear about which patterns he was dealing with, because it's a specific society. And then he gave examples. Once you've identified the basic patterns, well, it leads to, it helps you make choices about how you're going to develop spaces, and even down to finishes. I mean, there's a reason why people love to buy the old houses in New York and Vermont and Massachusetts. I mean, really old for our country, 200, 250 years old. And it costs them 10 times as much money to do the project, but it's a feeling, and it really speaks to deep-seated patterns that are in our cultural heritage. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense, because you just feel good. That's why people want fireplaces. I mean, from the practical standpoint, they no longer make sense at all. But
Right.
People want fireplaces.
Yeah. I found Kathryn Alexander in high school, I think, because that's when I wanted to be an architect, and I actually did a house, designed a house. in late elementary, early high school. It must have been early high school. And I was just taken with him, but I could find nothing about him at that time at all. I mean, it was just, there was a book that he had written that was really hard to understand. And so I just never really pursued it, but I really appreciated that he, could hear the truth of what he was talking about, but wasn't able to go any farther with it really in my particular environment. Yeah. So I thought it would be fun to have the two of you talk, but we'll see. If they ever get to do their talk together about that, I'll let you know.
Yeah, I'd like to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. I asked her to keep me in the loop, and I'll do that with Carl too.
I mean, I guess I could be said to have officially accepted my resignation from any kind of architectural stuff, but I know that it's not written. That's not really going to happen.
Well, and there's just so much learning. I mean, Jo's really young, so she's kind of the future of stuff.
Good for her.
So it would be great to just share. Yeah.
Now, my latest course of study is epigenetics.
Yes. Yes.
I've heard so much about genes. I had no idea that they're just a partial, very much a partial aspect of it. They are a chain of possibilities, but proteins that surround it and are drawn to attach to it can shut off genes, can activate genes, can completely add new effects to genetic expression.
Wow.
I mean, it's incredible what this lady is teaching us. And she's mainstream, so it is. She's not teaching something that's, a little bit on the
Who's
outside.
the person?
Well, she's a professor at some university in England, but she's well known for. I have accessed it through great courses.
Okay.
And I went and purchased it. But she's very bright and lively, so I'm enjoying it because it's making sense.
Yeah.
The picture she shows makes a lot of sense. And it kind of, when you see the genes and how they take on these protein riders, you might say, it almost looks like, our societal interactions.
Yeah.
How we grasp on to certain people or, trends in our society. And it can change everything very quickly. It can shut down certain aspects. It can lead to fuller expression of certain aspects. And it's very similar. Now, maybe that's just human beings seeing what they know in non-human aspects of life. I don't know. But, it's fun to see.
Well, one of the things that's been on my mind today is evolution. So how would you translate what you're learning into an understanding of evolution?
Well, evidently these protein riders actually influence the reproduction of genes. So there's two types of mutations. There's one is simple, or at least as she presented it. One is that there's just simply a mistake made, a genetic mistake, and there are all kinds of safeguards within the system, that reproduction system to eliminate such mistakes, so that mutations really are very rare. But she said this kind of mutation is actually extremely prevalent. The other type, the one where an attached protein conglomerate actually can shift the way the gene not only expresses in the moment, but it will continue to renew itself and express in the future. So it's just another form of mutation, but one that's generally not, might be considered additive and, useful to the living being rather than a mistake and deadly.
So there are more experimentations.
Yeah, so we're constantly a new experiment. And later on in this, I've only just started the course, but later on in the course, she does talk about how the various proteins and that their availability is deeply influenced by climate, various sociological environments. In other words, that's how nature can get in there and actually influence how our bodies start reacting in a general sense. But it's all this chemical relationship that can then lead to an adjustment of the genetic part, so that actually can be, inherited by the offspring. I was also interested to find out, this doesn't have anything to do with genes, that a lot of the gut flora that your mom had,
Yeah.
that's not necessarily going to be genetically triggered. But as your genes are starting to reproduce on their own, creating new cells, you're still the recipient of her bloodstream. So that's how we pick up a lot of those creatures that are not genetically tied to us, but that every human being is carrying.
Yeah, in birth, the birth canal also is that they've discovered that babies who are born through cesarean have trouble later in life because they don't always have all of the microbes that they would have gotten from their mother. So they're trying to figure out what to do about that. Yeah.
So it just makes it a whole lot more complicated process.
Yeah.
It's not like, God said, okay, these are your genes and this is the way you're going to be and this is what you're going to pass down. No, it's absolutely in flux all the time. That's not to say I don't use the word God. I certainly do. But it's just, she is just unbelievably more complex than anything we could have possibly imagined.
Yeah. Yeah. Autopoiesis at all levels.
Yeah, exactly.
I like what you're all saying. I'm interested in this too. I pulled up one of my quotes of epigenetics. Epigenetics emphasizes that the environment, and more importantly, our perceptions of the environment, control our gene activity.
Yeah.
We influence our gene activity.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Michelle Drake.
Think how we define things.
Yeah. Our attitudes, our moods, all of that. Yeah.
And I'm reading this book by Carl Chasen, and just this that change is the driving force of life. Because without change, there's nothing new.
Well, there's no autonomy. There's no agency without change. If anything has agency, then change has to happen because there's new decisions made all the time. So everybody else has to adjust.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's just has been so thrilling for me. It's just like, yeah, if you're static, you're dead. That's all.
I saw on, I love to go on YouTube every once in a while when I'm just sort of tired of working and want to relax. So I watch some of their shorts. So I saw one the other day, which was somebody had done what do you call it? Time lapse photography of some plants.
Oh,
And they said, so the headline to it was, so you think plants don't move?
yeah.
So it was a 2-day exposure, and it looked like this.
Yeah,
They were constantly moving,
yeah,
but much slower than we have the patience to watch.
yes, yes. Yeah, I guess actually Darwin came to that conclusion when he was sick and stuck in bed, and so he watched this plant on the windowsill, and he watched the tendrils move around. So he suddenly saw how much movement there was in a plant, even though he didn't have that still photography to really catalog it and to speed up so you could really see how fast it went. But he noticed that the plant was, the tendril would go over here and then it would go over there, and he could see that it did that. So yeah, he was an early adherent of plant movement, but got interested in other things.
Who knows whether it was that or simply he got such a hit of disbelief and antagonistic reception that he said, well, okay, I think I'll stick with animals.
Yes, that could be. Yeah. Yeah, the animals were hard enough to take, but plants. Yeah, so how do we evolve? What is evolution? What is,
Change.
how
Change.
change? So any change is evolution?
I guess so. I guess so. Yeah. It's life making itself up.
Well, some of it's making up doesn't work so well.
Well, nature learns all the time.
Yeah.
Some years ago, there was a book called something like The Sparrow's Beak, something like that. And
Beak of the Finch?
yeah, there you go. The
Yes, that the Galapagos. I have that actually and have read. Yes. It's the Beak of the Finch. It's the story of the finches on Galapagos Island.
And how they're continuously changing.
Yeah, yeah.
Even to the point where you could begin assigning a different species, assignment to the bird. And basically their beaks shift according to the availability of food, the growth of their beaks.
Yes, how thick they are, how long they are. Yeah. Yeah. And they're an incredibly studied species. There's a couple that have spent a greater part of every year for 50 years cataloging every bird that they've been able to find. So they know the history of every bird on the island. So they can trace it back and they can see these changes happening based on weather, and the weather determines what kind of food is available. And so the birds adapt. Yeah. It's a lovely book.
Significantly.
Yeah.
Not just habit patterns, but even their whole physical being.
Yeah, they measure beaks.
I mean, that's over generations.
Yeah.
None of the birds, they live 5 years or something.
Yeah.
So over 50 years, it could be 10 generations.
So is Galapagos, is that the way you pronounce it?
Galapagos, yeah.
Galapagos Island, the island that most of the studies have come from, like the 100th monkey and all those.
I don't know about the 100th monkey, but that was the island that Darwin visited and spent some time on, and that gave him some insights into evolution, which is why it's such a big place, a big deal. It's become a tourist attraction and stuff too, but yeah, but there's been people who've just spent their lives looking at the birds there.
Well, the beak of the finch, or the finch's beak, the author makes it very clear at the beginning that the reason why it's such a unique place to study these birds is that there's virtually no interaction with outside influences. Because it's just so far out in the middle of the Pacific that it's very rare to have, normal, natural, influence from other living things.
It's pretty isolated. Yeah.
The basic nature or principle of symbiosis and change and emergence.
Yeah.
You have to have the diversity to have the emergence, and then the branching patterns of life, and it's just so wonderfully put together.
Well, it goes to show that even where there's seemingly such a simple and isolated system, there's still emergence continuously.
Yeah.
Because at least something's changing.
Yeah. And it has to be responsive. Life has to be responsive to its situation in order to be effective. So it's always learning how to be more effective.
It always is.
And the other wonderful thing I learned from that book is that the understanding of competition is wrong. It's not that species compete against each other. They compete to find a place of no competition. That's what the changes are all about, is to find some niche that nobody else is exploiting so that they have access to it. So it's a very different way of thinking about competition than what we normally do, because we think of it as head to head, and it's no, I don't want to go head to head. I'm trying to find some place where I don't have to do that. And that's what's driving that uniqueness. Yeah, it was pretty profound.
In the book, Fractal Self, they point out that what was I going to say? The fractal self. Oh, they've discovered that all through life history, there's been a how did they term it? A cooperative constant.
Oh, yeah.
That competition is there all of the time, but that there's a cooperative constant throughout all of evolution.
Well, I think that comes back to all actions create the conditions that support life, because that's the
I still
operation.
My body still does not receive that thought that all actions are good for life.
No, it's all actions create the conditions that support life. That's how life works. That's not always true. Some actions do not create the conditions that support life.
You've changed.
Hello, people.
A little bit. Say it again, because that sounds more cleaned up. Say it
Well,
again.
all actions create the conditions that support life. That's the prime directive. That's what we should do. That's what the ethic tells us to do. But we have learned through our fall in the Garden of Gethsemane that we don't have to do that. We have choice.
all actions create conditions that support life, even atomic bomb.
No, no. If you're being ethical, yes, all actions create the conditions that support life. If
Then
you're
you have
being-
to deal with defining human-centric terms.
I don't think you do. I think no, I don't think you do at all. Because the human-centric would say we have choice, we don't have to do that because it doesn't work for me or for us. But life would say, no, you have to keep doing whatever will create the conditions that keep life on this planet. That's your job. I don't care what else you do, but you must do that. We're the only species that doesn't do that.
So our actions, some of our actions do not create conditions that support life.
That's what I just said.
But that's not what your initial,
No, because those are unethical, in my view. Those are unethical actions. To be ethical, you have to do what life requests, is to keep life going. Why wouldn't we do that? Why wouldn't we want to do that?
so
But
it's not
we
all
truly-
actions, it's all ethical actions.
It
Well,
should be all actions. If you look at nature, it is all actions. We are the only species that has actions that don't do that.
all right, gotcha now. Okay,
Yeah,
I agree.
that's kind of the point, is that's the schism that we've been so wedded to, our choice not to do that. We don't have to do that. Isn't that great? That makes us who we are. Well, it doesn't.
So all actions do not create the conditions that support life when you're talking about humans.
Correct.
Well,
And that's the problem.
That's important to say.
yeah. I think it also
That's important to differentiate between all actions, which of course include humanity, but if you don't spell that out, I've been confused by that term that you've repeated, because you didn't put the human part in there. Okay,
also it gets much more complicated than that, because it isn't just, seemingly it isn't just humans. My cat just walked through, and so it reminded me, definitely you could say that the fact that cats kill tons of birds, you know, that it's not conducive to life. However, my point is that cats are just they're just acting out according to their nature. And if we intrude upon their natural development as well as behaviors, you know, throughout their lives, which we do by feeding them continuously and so forth and so on, then their populations rise. There are many more cats. And so they're doing what they do naturally, but the effect is, in a sense, man-made.
Yeah, we keep them from their predators.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, our resistance to death, our seeing death as a bad thing, colors so much of the actions that we do and distort so much of the actions we do, because death is so integral and needs to be there in order to create the balance.
That's right.
And every time we distort that balance, then those actions don't create the conditions that support
right.
life. They do
That's
exactly the other way.
Agreed.
Yeah, no, our fear of death just drives so much. Yeah.
There's got to be a cycle. There's got to be death in order to be new life.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of the ways that the balance happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's true for every critter on the planet.
Life cycles.
Yeah. Yep.
Right now I'm being
Yes, you are.
What?
I gotta let her out.
Yes,
She's
the cat.
16 now. She doesn't catch anything, so I don't mind letting her out.
You.
Yeah, our cat's got into bugs, and that's fine. He can chase moths and flies as long as he wants them, and eat as many as he'd like.
Good. Leave the windows and doors open. Watch the circus.
I like the fact that she caught and ate the chipmunks around the property. Because now they're thriving.
Oh,
They are. The chipmunks are
They're out of
thriving
the
in
place
her.
now. She and her brother and sister, the three of them, used to keep the population of chipmunks down. So there's nothing in our garden, they just weren't here. Now they are, so we're having to adjust. So it's funny, that one I disapprove of, right? Too bad.
yeah. Yeah, we had a cat used to catch moles. Yeah. Bring them in.
They're all specialists,
He was an amazing cat. He was a boy. He was fixed. But he had a nurturing quality, and he would bring in stuff for the other cats. We had an old cat also that didn't do very well, and so he would bring her stuff, and just bring it in and just drop it for her. Yeah.
Was it still alive? Was it running around the house after?
Not as vigorously as it had before, but it would still be alive enough to entice and be exciting.
Wow.
And she could get pretty fast, even as old as she was. If it was right there, she could get it. Yeah. No, he did that a lot.
He helped maintain the community.
Yeah.
Community living.
Yeah. Very nurturing in a lot of ways.
Okay, so speaking of nurturing, what's her name? Simard, the woman who was writing about the mother tree.
Yes.
Evidently, there's now some pushback against that theory.
Oh, quite a bit. Yeah.
Well, I mean, in this case, it isn't just financially driven, but real scientists who are trying to reproduce her studies out in the wilderness, and are not able to. They're not being able to find a significant. I mean, they fully accept the symbiotic interaction between fungi and the trees, and just how there's that whole systemic relationship, but they have not been able to prove that if they isolate one smaller tree after another, that there's any difference in how the network feeds out, the nutrient,
Right.
or whatever. So it was a very scientifically oriented, study, as opposed to just simply disputing on grounds that they want to cut those trees down.
Yeah.
And what are they trying to prove or discover?
Well, the whole point was that there's certain elder trees. She found evidence of the tendency of certain elder trees to be caring for all of the growth around it. She could isolate and quantify the amount of nutrient that was being released, and that one tree would actually, according to her studies, would favor its own offspring. So if there was a pine, or let's say a Douglas fir, and there were other Douglas firs under her, they were her offspring, and they would be favored over the aspen, or the what other tree, the red maple, that grew in the same area and would get something, but it wouldn't get that kind of support, the same support. And she was able to show these things by using plots that were
And
that
radioactive stuff that she put
actually
in.
done, both in the labs and then out, but out in the countryside as well. But I gather with the purport of the article was that it has not been able to be successfully reproduced. Her findings have not been reproduced. You know, it's a sticking point, a small point, I mean, because the overall interaction between the plants and the fungi is not being disputed at all.
Right.
I think what they're after is just the anthropomorphizing that, you know, it's the mother tree and it might have actual attachments to its offspring the way we do. And that's what they're trying to, you know, follow up on proving or disproving.
Now, there's another study that I read that's a little different, but it looks at the sounds in soil.
The
So
sound,
the sounds, they're actually listening to soil, and they can tell when soil is alive because it's noisy.
Yeah.
It really is. Otherwise, it's very quiet because there's no life there. So they're using that as a way to determine how much regeneration happens when you go in and work with the soil and do stuff to see whether it's really working or not. And it also helps them. They claim that they can actually determine the various kinds of things that are making noise. So different beetles have different sounds, for instance. So that helps them also know the condition of the soil under trees without having to dig it all up and count and do that kind of stuff, which is what they've been doing before. So it makes it much easier for them to keep track of the health of the soil without disturbing it.
but could you unpack the sound is listening?
Yep. Because life moves. It's not stable. It moves. And when it moves, it makes noise. And they talk to each other also.
Well, yeah, but you said sound is listening.
Well, they can listen to the soil and hear the sound in the soil. Scientists.
So the scientists are listening.
Yes, there is a group of people who have turned to sound to listen to the soil as a way of evaluating its health and understanding.
Okay, I can understand that, but sound listening.
That's how they do it.
Huh?
That's how they do it. They take tape recordings of the soil. You can hear.
They were
different-
listening. The scientists are listening. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep, they're actually recording it. So
Right.
it's quite different. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I'm sure I'm sure they talk to each other down there.
So I'm just curious. I mean, going back to Simard's thing, I just wonder if there is a place for that. That's kind of why that came up in my mind, trying to figure out how they talk, whether there would be a sound to that. Because they're doing it, I think, with radioactive isotopes at this point. And so it might be interesting to just see if sound changes. That would just be a curiosity of mine.
At one point when I was studying sound, it seems that I learned that, what would the language be? Sound is the progenitor of all things in form.
Mhm. Yeah, and the word was spoken, and when the word was spoken, then the world came into existence. Yeah.
But that sound, I mean, when the things I've watched, I can't think of the word right now, but where you can see sound forming things.
Hmm.
Scimatics.
Scimatics, that's it, right. And yeah, the word God spoke and it was. Whatever, yeah.
Well, when you get right down to it, I mean, that's
It's vibration.
well,
Exactly.
yeah, it's all vibration, and all of everything is vibration, and it is only vibration.
Right.
When it comes down to matter, it is only vibrational.
Yep.
So it stands to reason that, yeah, sound would be a very, I mean, it may not, it's not sound necessarily like, like what we can hear or the way our ears work, but it's all vibration. Some of it we see. I mean, all of our senses are just different ways of perceiving these vibrations.
Yep. Yeah, that's why I did what I did for cancer. I figured I'd trust the physics.
Wow. It's fascinating.
Yeah. It worked.
When I'm thinking reflectively and stream of consciousness wise, I play with who I am as vibration, as vibration with an electromagnetic identity of some kind, but because I was journaling about that yesterday, how it is trying to express who I am.
Hmm.
Start with vibration.
Hmm.
And electromagnetic, because that is who we are, essentially.
I mean, we have a genome that's unique to each of us. We have a fingerprint that's unique to us, and that's all part of that same vibration. So our vibrations are just as unique, I would think, as everything else.
Everything else is unique because of the vibration.
Yeah.
Vibration is the base.
Yeah.
All energy is vibration, and I'm energy. So is this shirt. When it burns, it acts on everything. For one thing.
Yeah. The music of the spheres.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, we talked about how plants move and everything else needs to move and keep changing. What I'm struck by is both the simulations, but also actual electromagnetic photography of the smallest realms, the proteins, the interaction of chemicals with one another. They're always moving. There's just this constant motion and wrapping and unwrapping and well, it looks like almost a beehive or an ant farm where there's a whole cluster of insects that are just involved and then just spread apart, come back together, and it's just a constant flow. I wonder if stars do the same thing.
Oh, there's the thought.
At a very different time scale.
Yeah.
I like that we're stardust.
I would suppose then that stars do. They say that they're discovering more and more evidence of interstellar, stars, planets.
Well, and this plasma, the waves that happen when there's
Plasma is
movement. Yeah.
definitely, they're beginning to realize that there are plasma connectors between, well, all celestial, entities.
Yes.
Yeah.
I even wrote a poem about that.
I bet you did. Let's hear it.
Okay.
Find it.
I came from a star, elementally. I came from the sea, organically. I came from Africa, ancestrally. I came from Europe, racially. I came from Israel, spiritually. I came from Indiana, socially. I enter this moment eternally. I am who I am momentarily.
That's good.
I am a flicker of an all-consuming fire.
What did you call it, poem? What's the name?
Well, I read it. Oh, Deep Identity. I called it
Deep
Deep
Identity.
Identity.
Could you send that to me? Would you mind if I shared that with friends?
I'm happy to share it. Sure.
Yeah, and send it to me and I'll put it in a post
I
underneath
will.
the video.
I
Yeah.
would.
I
Got some
will.
friends gathering shortly, and I would love to share that with them. I think it would
It
be.
is good. I love it because I can feel every stage of it. Yeah.
It's like putting on that wonderful new shirt that just fits you perfectly.
That's right.
It's so good.
Yeah, Deep Identity. And it's true.
Yeah.
I love it. It just makes me eat life up. Oh. Yeah, I'll send that to you. Oh. I just happened to open to another one.
Oh, go ahead.
It's called Quantum God. The quantum realm is within me. At the vista point of each cell, I look into the vastness and my emotions begin to well. God, is it you? My subatomic reality? In my DNA, my divine natural ability? God of the universe, I am awed by your form and fashion. You are the grand organic design, the wonder and awe of my deep passion. I find you everywhere, in everything that lives. You are the subatomic reality of everything that is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and so it's from the book That Which Rises. And I got the title of the book from autopoiesis, from when I studied autopoiesis after I came back from the forest, because it says about autopoiesis that it's the interaction of the parts in a system, the interaction of the parts in the system that causes something to rise that is not in any of the parts.
Yep.
And that's
Yep.
why I call the book That Which Arises.
Yeah. Nice. Very good. We are at the end of our hour.
It's been a pleasure.
It has been a pleasure, and I will Try.
Always
Is your book on Amazon? Do you know?
that which arises.
Okay, so I'll find it and put a link in the
Yeah.
chat.
You
under
want
the-
me to send you a snapshot of it?
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
be happy to.
Yeah, we're slowly accumulating new people, and some people are actually paying attention. Yeah, and I've got the YouTube channel that belongs to the Coming Home Project, is getting traction also. The podcast, I think, is helping that, but people are coming and looking at other things and all of that. So we'll see.
So you go to YouTube and put in Coming Home Project?
No, it's at Bridge to Partnership. They've
Okay.
done what they call handles. So when you go to YouTube, you can put in at the @ sign and Bridge to Partnership, all one word, and it should come up.
You have so many things.
Yep.
So many breakdowns of what you offer.
Yeah.
that It's kind of overwhelming. Have you come to a synthesis? Well, the Coming Home Project.
The Coming Home is where it all comes together.
Yeah, right. Right, nice.
Yeah, but the way the mechanics work, because I have an email Bridge to Partnership and I don't have an email Coming Home.
But you could.
I could, yeah, but then that you talk about trying to simplify things. That does not simplify things. It adds another piece. So I'm not into that at this point in time. It's all I can do to keep up with what I've got. So yeah, so everything that goes on Coming Home also goes on the Bridge to Partnership YouTube channel. So, and their playlists, they're just like their playlists and Coming Home. You know, we've got the topics and they all have stuff. So that's the same thing in Bridge to Partnership.
I would like to envision and sketch, although I'm not a sketcher, you branching.
It keeps getting bigger. It
You're
always does. Yes, yes.
Yeah. You're a big tree. A lot of branches.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta get some things out for later today. So I'm gonna,
Would you both?
but see you next week.
All right.
Yes. See you
Bye-bye.
both.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.